So I reviewed the original Sofirn SP36 back in 2019, and this is an updated version of the SP36 Pro that came out earlier in the year. So instead of this being a full review like I typically do, I'm going to go over the differences between the Pro and the standard version, mainly between the LEDs, increase in output, and different UIs. Thanks to Sofirn for being so understanding on this review. It took longer than expected with life getting in the way. They have provided a coupon where you can find the SP36 and SP36 Pro for a discount in the description below. So if you're interested, please check those out. It does help support the channel. And if you're not following me on social media, I've got links down there for all that stuff too. So as far as accessories, the light comes with the option of shipping with batteries or not. Mine came with batteries, and they are these Sofirn 3000 milliamp hour cells. These are pretty good cells. They're not the best cells you could use, but I'd probably be a Samsung 30Q, but they work good and the price is right. Other than that, all the accessories are the same between the two lights. The light on the left is the SP36 Pro, and the light on the right is the normal SP36. And you can see looking down the middle there, they look pretty similar, but they are running different LEDs. The SP36 Pro is running 4 SST40 LEDs that are available in a 5000 or a 6500 Kelvin tint. I have the 5000 Kelvin version here. The non-Pro here is using the Cree XP-L2s, a great LED in their own right. The difference between the SST40s is they're a little bit brighter at 8000 lumens versus the Cree's 6000 lumens, so an additional 2000 lumens. They're also a little bit more throwy and kind of closer on par with the original Q8. There's still a pretty floody beam here with some artifacts around the edges that you'll see in my night shots, and pretty normal for this type of reflector. The beam has a pretty defined hot spot, no noticeable tinges at lower outputs, which is great to see here. As I turn the light on here before it gets too bright, you can see that hot center there from the side works pretty good to show you that. And you can see a little bit of the artifacting, but my night shots will show that better. Okay, here are my night shots for the Sofirn SP36 Pro. We'll compare it to the normal SP36, but right now, here it is. It's running those SST40 LEDs, about 5000 Kelvin temperature, and this is on one of the lower modes in that Android firmware, and we can ramp up. And there is the full 8000 lumens, and yeah, it's bright. It throws pretty well here. You can see those pine trees across the street. Those are a good couple hundred yards away, no problem. These SST40s throw a little bit further than the Crees on the other model. So here is the SP36. This is running those Cree XP-L2s, about 6000 lumens in peak output here, and 5500 Kelvin. We can see again, this throws pretty well here. Not quite as well, but close. We can see it's a little bit cooler tint as well, hard to tell. So there is the SP36 Pro, and there is the SP36. Not a ton of difference between the two, but you can see the SP36 Pro with my eyes is a little bit brighter, a little bit more neutral tint, and I do like that Android firmware. So let's talk about runtime here, and this might get a little bit confusing to some people, so I'll try and do my best to explain it. Since this light is running Android, I highly recommend you calibrate it. I did that when I first got it, and it results in longer runtimes and better thermal regulation. For a video on how that's done, let me know in the comments. I might have time to do that in the future. I've talked about that in other Sofirn reviews and other lights that I've done with the Android firmware. Below is the graph comparing two runtimes with the different emitters that the light has between the SP36 and SP36 Pro. This graph compares 100% of relative output with each light, so it isn't a comparison of brightness. It's really a graph of runtimes plotted against each other with relative outputs being equalized. While the batteries are not the exact same, the Sofirn batteries that I run in the SP36 Pro and Samsung 30Qs that are running in the SP36, they are similar. For me, the big takeaway is that running Android on a calibrated SP36 Pro, the outputs are more active and can step up and down as the light cools off, resulting in a more efficient output along with the different LEDs, and the result is more usable light for longer, and the tail end of the graph shows that there's about 15 or 20% more light as a result of that. So the UI here, as I mentioned before, the Pro is running Android version 1.0 versus the standard lights running Narsil M. I won't take a lot of time to explain Android 1.0 because I think a lot of people are probably familiar with it. It's complex and flexible for your needs. It's got ramping, as I've got the light set in here, as you can see, and then you can also do stepped driver mode with 3 clicks, 1, 2, 3. So now it does steps instead of ramping, whichever you prefer. The light has that. It's got a ton of other options that you can set this thing up to do. You got candle mode, you've got flicker, thunderstorm, muggle mode. Just it can do a whole lot. It's complex though, so make sure you check out that diagram and take some time to learn it. On the charging side, it is still USB-C here. It does not accept USB-C to C or PD charging. You've got to use USB-A to C cable, which is a little bit disappointing. And max charging speed is still 1.86 amps as the original had. So my conclusion, the Sofirn SP36 Pro is an enthusiast light with a nice little upgrade over the standard SP36 with the additional output and switching over to the Android 1.0 firmware. It's more like a scaled down BLF Q8 with a ton of output still and an Android firmware. The SP36 and Q8 are the SP36 platform and Q8 are my favorite can style lights, and the SP36 Pro is a nice addition that I can recommend if you want a little bit more output, tint options with your LEDs, and don't mind the complexity of the Android firmware. Overall, a good light at a value price. Thanks for watching these videos. Please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll catch you on the next review soon.